The large hall was full of music, lights, and laughter, as rich people talked and drank expensive wine, all wearing their best clothes, trying to show who was richer and more powerful. But then everything stopped when she walked in. Evelyn Song, the young and famous CEO of the biggest fashion company in the city, entered the gala, with her head held high, her heels clicking on the marble floor, and her long black dress flowing like a queen's robe. Everyone turned to look at her. She was beautiful but cold like a diamond, her eyes sharp and unreadable, her lips holding a quiet challenge, as if she knew no one could match her, not in business, not in beauty, and not in love. People whispered as she passed by, saying she had rejected every man who tried to impress her. Some brought flowers, some brought money, some even brought luxury cars. But Evelyn said no to all of them. No one could win her heart, and tonight she was about to prove it. As the music faded and the host of the charity gala thanked the guests, Evelyn raised her hand and asked to speak. Her voice was calm but strong, and the crowd fell silent. "I have a game," she said, looking around the room with a small, cold smile, "something fun for tonight. If any man in this room can sit at that piano and play Chopin's Ballade No. 1 from beginning to end with real feeling and real skill, then I will agree to marry him." The crowd gasped, then laughed. Some clapped thinking it was a joke. Some shook their heads knowing the piece was too hard even for trained musicians. Ballade No. 1 was one of Chopin's most difficult and emotional works, a storm of notes and power. Only true pianists could play it without mistakes. "She's joking," said one man, smiling nervously. "No, she's serious," said another, looking at her face. Evelyn nodded. "Yes, I am serious." The room buzzed with shock and curiosity. People whispered and waited, looking around to see if any man would try. One by one, a few brave men walked to the piano, trying their best. One played a simple tune and stopped. Another hit wrong notes and gave up. The third one barely knew how to start. Evelyn watched them all with no emotion, her arms crossed, her eyes cold and bored. "I guess no one is worthy," she said softly, turning to leave. But then the doors opened and someone stepped in. He did not wear a suit, he did not look rich, he held a small girl in his arms and wore a simple jacket and jeans. His shoes were old, his hair messy. Some guests looked at him with disgust. "Who let him in?" they whispered. But Evelyn turned and looked at him with interest, not because he was handsome or rich, but because he walked with calm steps and steady eyes, like someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to lose. The man walked toward the piano and set the little girl down on a chair next to him. She looked about 6 years old, her hair tied in a ponytail, and her eyes big and curious. The man turned to Evelyn and said softly, "I would like to try, if that's all right." Evelyn raised one eyebrow and said with a voice full of challenge, "Do you even know who Chopin is?" The man nodded without fear. "Yes, I do, and I know this piece too." The room laughed again, some even booed, but the man sat at the piano and placed his fingers gently on the keys. The little girl smiled at him and whispered, "Daddy, you can do it." The room went quiet again, not out of respect, but out of confusion and curiosity. Who was this man? Why did he look so sure? Could he really play? The first note came out soft like a whisper, then the second, and the third. Soon the hall was filled with beautiful sound, the kind of music that makes people stop breathing. People turned their heads in surprise. Some stood up from their chairs, others closed their eyes, listening to the notes that poured from the piano like water from a spring. It was not just correct, it was powerful and full of feeling. Every note carried a story, every pause held emotion. Even Evelyn could not hide her surprise. Her lips parted just slightly, her eyes locked on the man at the piano. The little girl swayed gently to the music, her feet kicking softly under her chair. She looked proud, as if she knew her father had magic in his hands. The man did not look at anyone, he just played, as if the world outside did not exist, only the keys, only the sound, only the memory behind the music. And then something strange happened. The people who laughed before now watched in silence. Some even had tears in their eyes. The piece reached its hardest part, and still the man played with no mistake, with no fear. He was not just playing notes, he was speaking through the piano, telling a story of pain, of love, of something lost, and something still hoped for. And then the final note came soft and slow, and the room stayed silent for a long moment, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Finally, Evelyn stepped forward, her face unreadable, her voice low as she said, "Who are you?" The man looked up for the first time and said, "My name is Daniel, I'm just a single dad." And this was the song I played for my wife on our wedding day. The room stayed quiet as Daniel looked up from the piano, his fingers still resting on the keys, his soft voice repeating the words he had just spoken. This was the song I played for my wife on our wedding day. Evelyn stood still, her arms at her side, her mind racing with thoughts. She had expected someone to try and fail. She had not expected this, a man with no fame, no name, no suit. Yet his music had touched something deep inside her, something she thought was gone. People in the room began to clap slowly, then louder, then all at once, not because Evelyn told them to, but because their hearts had been moved. The way his hands danced on the keys, the way his face showed both pain and peace, it was like the music came from his soul. The little girl Lily ran to him and hugged him tight. He picked her up and kissed her head. She giggled and whispered, "Daddy, you did it. I knew you could." Evelyn stepped closer, her heels quiet on the floor, her eyes fixed on Daniel, as she asked again, "Who are you really? Where did you learn to play like that?" Daniel looked at her with calm eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen both joy and loss, and said, "I used to be a music student. I played piano for years. It was my dream. But life changed. After my wife passed away, I stopped playing for a long time. Now I work at a car repair shop. I only play when Lily asks me to." Evelyn blinked slowly. She felt something strange inside, something she had not felt in years, maybe never, before. It was not just about the challenge anymore, not about proving a point, not about her pride. This man, this simple man, had played the most beautiful version of Chopin she had ever heard, and he had done it not to win her, but for the memory of someone he loved. The crowd started to leave, talking about what they had seen, some still shocked, some smiling, some wiping their eyes. The music had ended, but the story had just begun. Evelyn looked at Lily, the little girl with bright eyes and a sweet smile, and said softly, "You must be very proud of your dad." Lily nodded and said, "I am. He fixes cars and plays songs and reads me bedtime stories. He even makes funny pancakes shaped like bunnies." Daniel laughed gently and said, "She's my biggest fan and my best critic too." Evelyn smiled without meaning to. It felt strange on her face, like a forgotten habit. She turned to Daniel and said, "I want to talk more. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring Lily if you want." Daniel nodded, unsure why a CEO would want to talk to someone like him, but something in her eyes told him this was not just about the piano anymore. The next morning Daniel woke up early. He brushed Lily's hair, packed a small bag, and wore his cleanest shirt. They took the bus into the city, Lily holding his hand, the whole time asking questions about tall buildings and what CEOs eat for breakfast. When they reached the office building, it was taller than anything Daniel had seen, clean glass shining in the sun, people in suits moving like ants with purpose and pride. He felt small, but Lily looked around with wide eyes like it was an adventure. Inside the office, Evelyn waited by the window, looking out over the city, her back straight, her mind full of questions. As Daniel entered, she turned slowly and said, "Thank you for coming." Daniel nodded and sat down. Lily climbed onto his lap and played with a pen on the desk. Evelyn smiled at her, then looked at Daniel. "You surprised me last night," she said. "I made that challenge thinking no one would even try, but you came in and changed everything." Daniel replied, "I didn't come for you or the challenge. I only played because that song means something to me, and Lily wanted to hear it again." Evelyn respected that honesty. It was rare in her world, where people wore masks and spoke only for gain. She asked more about his life, and Daniel told her about the small apartment, the long hours at the garage, the books he read, to Lily the dreams he once had, and how he buried them after his wife got sick. He spoke with simple words, but each word felt real, and Evelyn listened more closely than she had listened to anyone in years. Then she said something unexpected. "I want to offer you something, not marriage, not yet, but something else." Daniel raised his eyebrows, curious. "I want you to play again," she said. "I want you to come here once a week and play for me, and Lily too. If she wants, I'll pay you for your time. Think of it as music therapy for a cold heart." Daniel laughed softly and said, "I don't think your heart is cold, not really." Evelyn looked at him quietly, then looked at Lily, who was now drawing flowers on a notepad. "Maybe not completely," she whispered. Outside the window, the city moved fast and loud, but inside that office a strange calm settled between three people who came from very different worlds, yet somehow had found a small, gentle connection through music and memory. And as they sat together in that quiet moment, none of them knew how deeply their lives were about to change. The next week, Daniel returned to the tall glass building holding Lily's hand she skipped beside him smiling and humming the same Chopin tune he had played at the gala. Her backpack bounced on her shoulders, and her eyes were full of excitement. Inside the office, Evelyn waited by the piano that had been moved to a quiet room with soft light and warm colors. She had not touched the keys in years, but now she sat beside them every day thinking about the man who had brought them back to life. Daniel smiled politely as he walked, and Lily ran to the window and looked out at the cars below, saying, "Daddy, it looks like toy land from up here." Evelyn laughed and said, "That's how I felt when I first came to this office. Everything looked small, like I was bigger than the world, but that feeling goes away fast." Daniel sat down and played a few soft notes. The sound filled the room like a gentle wind, not loud, not proud, just peaceful and kind. Evelyn closed her eyes and listened, not speaking, not moving, just breathing in the music like it was something pure. After the song ended, Daniel looked at her and said softly, "Do you want to hear the story behind the song you asked me about last time?" Evelyn opened her eyes and nodded, her face serious, her voice almost a whisper. "Yes, I do." He looked at the keys as he spoke, each word slow and quiet. "I met my wife Anna at music school. She played violin, I played piano. We were both poor, but happy. We used to sneak into empty classrooms at night and play together. Sometimes we would get caught, but we didn't care." Evelyn smiled gently as he continued. "I played Chopin's Ballade No. 1 the night I proposed to her. It was her favorite piece. She cried so much she forgot to say yes at first." Lily giggled and said, "Mommy always cried when Daddy played, even when the song was happy." Daniel nodded and said, "We got married in a small church, no big dress, no cake, just friends, music, and love. I played that same piece again at our wedding, and again when she got sick and couldn't sleep, and again when the doctor said there was nothing more they could do." His voice cracked just a little, but he kept talking. "The last time I played it for her was in the hospital. She held my hand and told me to keep playing always, even after she was gone. So I played through tears, through pain, and when she left I couldn't touch the piano again for 3 years." Evelyn felt something sharp in her chest, a strange ache she did not know she could still feel. "I never told that story to anyone else," Daniel said, "not even my boss at the garage, not my neighbors, not my friends, if I still have any left." Evelyn looked at him and said, "Why me?" He shrugged and said, "Maybe because when I played that night you listened not just with your ears, but with something else, something inside." She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice, then reached into her drawer and pulled out a small photo. It was old and bent, but still clear, a young girl sitting at a piano with her hands on the keys and her eyes wide. "That's me," Evelyn said. "I used to play too, but my father made me stop, said music was for dreamers, not leaders. So I locked that dream away and tried to forget it." Daniel looked at the photo, then at her face, and said, "Maybe it's time to unlock it again." Lily ran over and said, "Miss Evelyn, do you know any songs?" Evelyn smiled sadly and said, "I did once, but I forgot most of them." Lily took her hand and pulled her toward the piano. "Come try," she said. "Daddy will help you." Evelyn hesitated, then sat beside Daniel at the bench, her fingers shaking just a little. Daniel gently guided her hand to the keys. "Play just one note," he said. She pressed a single key, and the soft sound filled the room like a secret. Waking up from a long sleep, her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "I didn't think I'd ever touch a piano again." Daniel smiled and said, "Music waits for you. It never forgets, even if you forget it." They sat there in silence, a woman who had lost her joy, a man who had lost his love, and a little girl who still believed in both. Outside, the city kept moving fast and cold, but inside that room something warm began to grow, not loud, not sudden, just slow and real, like the start of a new song. And as the sun touched the glass windows and lit the keys with gold, Daniel turned to Evelyn and asked a quiet question. "Do you believe music can heal a broken heart?" Evelyn looked down at her hands, then at Lily, then at Daniel. "Maybe," she said in a voice so soft it almost disappeared. "Maybe it already has." The next time Daniel came to the office, Evelyn was waiting with something new in her eyes. It was not just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something unsure, something that scared her, even though she did not show it on her face. She wore a soft blue dress instead of her usual sharp black suit. Her hair was loose, her smile small and real, not forced, not cold. Daniel noticed right away and asked, "Is everything okay?" She nodded slowly and said, "Yes, I think so, maybe, I don't know." Then she looked at him and said something no one expected. "I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly. Daniel nodded. Lily was in the corner playing with a puzzle on the floor, not listening to the adults. Do you remember what I said at the gala? Evelyn asked the crazy thing about marrying someone who could play Chopin. Daniel nodded again and said, of course, how could I forget that? She looked down at her hands, then back up at him, and said softly, I meant it when I said it, even though I didn't expect anyone to win. And now I keep thinking about it over and over, and I don't know if I was playing a game or if life is playing one with me. Daniel looked at her with kind eyes, the kind that don't rush, the kind that wait until the other person is ready. So what are you asking? He said gently. I want to give you a chance to know me better, Evelyn said, not as a CEO, not as the woman with cold eyes, not as the person who made a crazy challenge at a party. Just me, Evelyn, the person who used to love music and pancakes and fairy tales. Daniel smiled a little at the word pancakes and said, okay, what does that mean exactly? She took a deep breath and said, spend 1 week with me, not as a worker, not as a guest, just spend time with me. And if at the end of the week you still want nothing more than to go back to your garage, then I'll never ask again. But if something happens, if your heart says something different, then maybe, just maybe we can talk about what comes next. Daniel blinked, surprised not by the offer, but by the softness in her voice, the honesty, the way her eyes almost looked scared, like a little girl asking for a friend. He thought for a moment, then said, I'll do it, but only if Lily comes with me. Wherever I go, she goes. Evelyn nodded and said, of course, she's part of the package, right? So the next day, Daniel and Lily moved into a quiet guest room at Evelyn's large house. It had soft carpets and big windows, and a piano in the corner that had not been touched in years. Lily ran through the halls, laughing and dancing, her voice echoing off the high walls. She called it castle and named all the rooms like a fairy tale palace, the music room, the snack room, the sleepy room. Evelyn watched her and smiled more than she had smiled in years. She helped Daniel cook breakfast and learned how to flip pancakes without burning them. She listened as he told bedtime stories to Lily and even added her own silly voices to the characters. They walked in the garden together and talked about small things like stars and clouds and what dreams smell like. But while Evelyn's heart was warming, something else was happening behind her back. Her assistant, a sharp man named Colin, who had always wanted her power, began to watch with quiet anger. He took photos of Daniel and Lily inside the mansion, sent emails to gossip sites, and called reporters with secrets real and fake. He told the company board that Evelyn had lost her mind, that she was risking the company's future for a piano player with a sad story, that she was not thinking clearly anymore. He said, this man is dangerous. He's using her kindness, and soon everything she built will fall because of him. Evelyn had no idea what was coming. She was too busy laughing at Lily's jokes, too busy listening to Daniel's music, too busy remembering how it felt to be human again. But the storm came fast. One morning, Daniel opened the front door to find flashing cameras, reporters yelling questions, microphones pushed toward his face. Is it true you're living here? Are you dating the CEO? Are you after her money? Daniel pulled Lily close and shut the door. Reporters kept shouting through the gate. Evelyn ran downstairs, her phone already ringing over and over. Her voice shook as she answered a call from a board, and they said, you need to fix this now or step down from your role. She looked at Daniel, her heart full of fear and anger and something else, something she could not name. I'll handle it, she said through clenched teeth. I just need time. But Daniel stood still and said maybe the words she feared the most. If I'm ruining everything, I should leave. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice low and shaking. No, stay, we'll face this together. I'm not afraid of them. But she was, and Daniel could see it in her eyes. He reached for her hand and held it tight. Don't let them scare you, he said, not yet. And as the cameras flashed outside and the phones kept ringing inside, Evelyn knew this was the moment where everything would change. The next day, the news spread like wildfire across the city, across the internet, across every phone screen, in every hand. Photos of Evelyn, the powerful CEO, and Daniel, the unknown mechanic, were everywhere, walking in her garden, cooking together, playing the piano, with Lily smiling like a family. The headlines screamed with questions and rumors. CEO in love or under spell? Stranger with a child moves into billionaire mansion. Is this the end of Song Enterprises? Inside the house, the mood changed from soft and warm to quiet and cold. The piano stayed silent. Lily asked why people were yelling outside the gate, and Daniel only held her close and said, everything is okay, I promise. But it was not okay. Evelyn stood in her office, facing the board of directors, on a video, Call their faces like stone, their voices sharp and full of doubt. You have to fix this, said one member. You must clear your name and remove this man from your home. Another said this could ruin our stock value, our clients, our reputation. Everything we built is at risk. Evelyn felt like a child again, like when her father scolded her for playing music instead of reading numbers, like when her dreams were pushed aside for the sake of control. She said in a clear voice, I will not throw him out like trash. I invited him into my life, and I do not regret it. They replied, then you must choose him or the company. Daniel heard the words from the hallway. He did not mean to listen, but they hit him like cold water to the face. That night he sat alone at the piano, the keys quiet under his fingers, his heart heavy. He looked around at the house that never truly felt like his. He looked at Lily sleeping peacefully in the guest room, holding her stuffed bunny, with a small smile on her face. Then he wrote a letter. It was short and careful. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the days that felt like dreams. But dreams are not meant to last. I cannot let you lose everything for someone like me. Daniel. The next morning Evelyn found the letter on the piano. Her heart dropped, her hands shook. She ran through the halls, calling his name, but he was gone. Lily woke up and asked, where's Daddy? Evelyn knelt beside her and held her tight, not knowing what to say, not knowing how to stop the tears from falling. Then something caught her eye on the piano bench. It was the sheet music for Chopin's Ballade No. 1. He had left it behind. Her breath caught in her throat because she remembered what he once said. When I'm lost, I play Chopin. She grabbed her coat, held Lily's hand, and ran outside, past the reporters, past the cameras. She did not care anymore. She had to find him. She called every music hall in the city, every small venue, every school. Finally, someone said they had seen a man with a little girl and a rolled-up sheet of music enter a quiet music studio near the park. She rushed there, her heart beating like a drum. She pushed open the doors, and there he was sitting at the same piano where it all began, the one from the gala, playing the song he had once played for love, and then for memory, and now for goodbye. The music was soft, but full of pain, full of things that could not be said with words. Lily ran to him. Daddy, Daddy, we came back. Daniel stopped playing and turned his eyes wide, his voice caught. You found me. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice firm, but her hands shaking. You left without letting me fight for you, without letting me decide what I was willing to risk. He stood up slowly. I didn't want to be the reason you lost everything. She stepped closer. If I lose this company, then maybe it was never mine to begin with. Maybe I built a kingdom with no soul. Maybe I needed you to remind me what real life feels like. They stood there in silence, surrounded by music and memory, and something deeper than both. Then Lily took both their hands and placed them together, smiling like only a child can, and said, please stop being silly and come home. Daniel laughed through tears, Evelyn smiled through pain, and they both knew that no matter what the world said, this moment was real, this feeling was true, and some things were worth fighting for. Outside, the reporters still waited. Outside, the board still watched. Outside, the world still judged. But inside that music hall, a family had just taken its first true breath. The next morning, the city woke up to a different kind of headline. CEO Evelyn's song chooses love over legacy. Photos of Evelyn, Daniel, and Lily walking out of the music hall hand in hand were everywhere. No one was yelling now, no one was asking questions, because the answers were already clear in their eyes, in their smiles, in the way they stood together, not as strangers, not as a scandal, but as a family. Back at the company, the board was quiet. Some were angry, some were afraid, but none could deny the truth. Evelyn stood before them proud and calm, her voice steady, her choice made. You asked me to choose between this company and my heart. I will always choose what is right, not just what is safe. They could fire her if they wanted, they could replace her, but they could never take away what she had found, not in numbers, not in power, but in music and in love. Some board members supported her, others did not, but it did not matter because the story had already reached the world, and the world was not laughing anymore. They were listening. Weeks passed, and the noise faded. Reporters moved on. The company found balance again, and Evelyn found something she never had before: peace. Daniel and Lily stayed with her, not just as guests, but as something more. They filled the house with laughter and songs and stories. The piano was no longer silent. Every morning Daniel played something soft, while Lily danced around the kitchen. Evelyn would sip her coffee and smile, not the fake smile she used in meetings, but a quiet, real one made from love. One evening Evelyn took Daniel's hand and led him into the garden under the soft lights and the evening sky. There was no music playing, only the sound of the wind and the soft rustle of trees. I used to think love was a weakness, she said, something that distracted people from goals, from power, from success. But now I know it is the only thing that makes all those things matter. Daniel looked at her not with surprise, but with understanding. He had always seen the girl behind the title, the heart behind the shield. He said, love is not loud, it's patient, it's small, it grows in the quiet moments. They stood there for a long time, not needing to speak, not needing to move, just holding each other, while Lily chased fireflies nearby, laughing with joy. 1 week later, a small wedding was held, not in a church, not in a castle, just in their backyard, surrounded by flowers, by music, and by the people who truly mattered. Daniel wore a simple suit. Evelyn wore a dress with soft piano notes stitched into the sleeves. Lily stood between them, holding both their hands and smiling wider than the sun. When the vows were said, Daniel walked to the piano set in the garden and played one more time. Chopin's Ballade No. 1 filled the air, not as a challenge, not as a memory, but as a promise. A promise that love could return even after great loss. That music could speak where words could not. That broken hearts could still beat together in harmony. Evelyn closed her eyes and let the notes wrap around her like a warm blanket, soft and strong. She knew now that her father had been wrong. Music was not for dreamers. It was for the brave who dared to feel, the brave who dared to hope again, the brave who dared to begin again. After the final note faded, Daniel looked at Evelyn and smiled the same smile he had on the first day. They met, the same smile that had once said nothing and now said everything. Lily ran to him and hugged his legs, whispering, "Daddy, that was perfect." Evelyn joined them and placed her hand on the piano. "Thank you," she said, "not just for the song, not just for the love, but for waking up the part of me I thought was gone." And Daniel said, "I didn't wake it, you did. You just needed someone to remind you how to listen." As the sun set, the garden lights shimmered like stars above them. The little family stood under the sky, surrounded by silence, but full of music inside. No applause, no crowd, no headlines. Just them. Just love. Just the final note.